Good
Richard,
morning, Keith.
man. Thanks, man. Dude, when I run into people that, know both you and me, they'll say something like, man, I saw the podcast, man. I'm loving Rick's hair. Dude, so, because we've been doing this for a few years now. So there's been some changes in both of us. When we first started, this was all, black for me, my
Oh, yeah, yeah,
beard,
that's
and
right.
now I got the gray going. Your hair was nice and short, and now it's beautiful and long. Man, I like it. How do you like it?
Well, it's a wig. So I don't know. I shave my head just like you do. So
Okay.
it's okay. I got 3 or 4 wigs, but this is the only one that I wear for the show.
Okay. Now, what about the soul patch? What about that?
What about it?
Is that
What do
is
you
that
want to
glued
know?
on? Is that glued on or is
That's
that real?
little spirit gum. Yeah, from my old acting days. I just slap it on it. Makes me feel young.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Hey man, so I thought we would do a show on about how to be a good friend.
Oh, cool.
Uh,
Okay.
what do you think?
Yeah, great. Kick it off, man. What do you think? What are the main requirements, the best requirements for a friend that you have?
Well, for me, they've changed over the years, and like many things, the deeper I get into my practice and my commitment to being kind, not being a troublemaker, but instead being a contribution to everyone around me, and not just people that who agree with me, but just being kind to people who may not agree with me or we don't share the same kind of views. That's more important to me. I think that's really elevated. And I think that that's in the spirit of people before us, like Mother Teresa, Eleanor Roosevelt, Viktor Frankl. I think it's at that level. And so that's how, I want to live into that kind of being. And because I want to, the types of friends or friendships that I need around me are different. Back in the day, if I was out being a troublemaker, a good friend would be somebody who agreed with me and said, hey, you're right, absolutely, you should be upset, and like, you need to go handle that, and I got your back. Like, so they would encourage me being a troublemaker. But these days, the good friends for me are, you and Tim, Rick and Pete, Brian and I mean, you're Rick. I mean, Brian and Matt. So those are, the kind of friendships that, are just really super inspiring to me, man, because you don't feed my ego, you don't give me agreement, you don't placate me, you inspire me to play a bigger game, and you never tell me that what I'm doing or thinking is wrong. You just kind of don't say anything. You just kind of let me sit there. And it's amazing that when the ego doesn't get reinforced and you just are left with how silly you're being. It's kind of like the child who's throwing the tantrum and looking for some kind of attention to get their way. And then the parent just walks away. And then the child just all of a sudden stops crying. That's kind of like what you guys do with me. So when I'm suffering and I'm carrying on and I'm like metaphorically throwing stuff and throwing slander about other people around, you guys just kind of like, just do this. And you let me sit with it, you're like, oh, did I stop? I
What
come
is
back to
that?
myself. So to me, I want to be that kind of friend to other people. Like, I don't want to give any comfort toward the ego, but I want to do it in a way that is loving, that is, full of grace, and it kind of holds space. So that's my definition of being a good friend, of being a stand for the best of me. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think what helped me kind of break out from my old ways, where I was pretty much looking at people, how many compliments I got, or how many times they would think that I was right and someone else was wrong. That ego-based behavior. I think what helped me get out of that was when I started studying more about this 15 or 20 years ago. I realized how much suffering that really created, because you can never get enough of it.
No,
And so
you can't.
you become inauthentic by acting in a certain way so that you get strokes, or at least I did. So one of the things that helped me was when I began studying this. I found that there were 4 things in life that really helped me dealing with other people, and also understanding and being kind to myself. three of them aren't the topics of this show, but I'm going to give them to you anyway. So the four are that I believe are really important in relationships and in dealing with life and in being kind to yourself are: number one, the idea that we have a sense of equanimity, a sense of calmness, a sense of even temperedness, that, you know, we go through life with the idea that, yes, there's a lot of things that are going to happen, but I have an inner gyroscope that's going to keep me on the beam, and it's not going to knock me off, even if it's bad news, especially when it's bad news. So equanimity is a big one for me. The second thing would be the idea of loving kindness, which you're a perfect example of. Always being kind and friendly to other people. There's nothing worse than just being angry for no reason for some innocent person and you take it out on them. So just being open and friendly, not hard to do, it's easy. We do it with each other that we like, with people we like. We can do it with everybody. The third thing is something that's really, really important. And I don't know how you can teach this. It's just the idea of compassion. And so that's the biggest thing, I think, that helped me with relationships. The idea that everybody, not just me, everybody is feeling sadness or loneliness or disappointment, and they're trying to cope just like I am. And everybody is trying to be a better person or trying to figure out what life has offered them that's difficult and how to get through it. Everybody has an obstacle. So that compassion, the idea that the way that I'm suffering is the same way that other people are suffering, probably worse. And to start with the idea that they are in a position just like I am, and therefore by sending compassion and love and empathy and understanding, that helps. And then the last quality is something called, I guess you'd call it empathy or empathetic joy, like empathetic joy, meaning it's the kind of joy that doesn't have any reward for you personally. I'll give an example. Empathetic joy for me would be like giving a kid a Christmas present and then watching him open it, right? It's just so cool to see a kid get bright-eyed and excited, and they're really thrilled that they've got a present. Well, the present didn't come to you; it came to the little one, and you're just joyful, like a little kid experiencing that joy with this child. So, empathetic joy is the fourth of those, and those four things to me are the things that have helped me, I think, be a better friend, and also not suffer from trying to constantly want to get something back from other people.
Yeah, I totally agree, Rick. That joy that you talked about, Dr. Sood in the Guide to Stress-Free Living talked about a research study of where people experienced the most joy and happiness. And it wasn't contrary to what we might think of receiving gifts or an expression of kindness. It was actually when we gave that to someone else. And that's when you feel the greatest joy, because it's really shared. So I totally agree with that. And I've seen that show in my life with the kindnesses that people have given me and what I've given them
Yeah.
freely.
Yes.
And I feel like every single day that's a contribution that I want to make. I want to contribute loving kindness. One of the things I think too in the show topic about how to be a good friend is not asking my friends to do certain things for me. And I mentioned this again, I want to just reiterate this, is a lot of times when I felt wronged or I felt not supported by whoever they are. But whenever that's happened, I've asked my friends to kind of, I would say support me, but really it's not really support, because if your support means making an enemy out of someone, if your definition of supporting me means making an enemy out of someone else, is that really support? Well, it's not the kind of support I want. That support is the strengthening of the ego. And then you got a collective ego, or when another ego and another one comes together, and then you add more to it, it's a collective ego, which causes even more suffering. So I'm not about that. But rather the kind of support I want is I want you to help me redefine the conversation, redefine the question. And so if I feel like I've been wronged in the workplace or somebody else is taking advantage of me and not respecting me, I want you to reframe the question like, okay, so that's maybe something that's out of your control, Keith. How can you learn from this? How can it help you strengthen maybe something that is deficient? How can you expand the capacity to accept? How can you expand the capacity to hold space for someone whose behavior may not be conscious? Like I want you to help, like, how can you like use this opportunity to become a better leader? Like those are the kinds of things that I want you to help me do. So as a friend, as a good friend, I want to come to you with those questions if there is something that I'm dealing with, as opposed to support me in this way to continue to make this person an enemy, continue to cause trouble. I don't want that. I mean, a lot of people go through divorces and you know, a lot of it is some of our behavior, maybe it's our ex-partner's behavior, but they go through divorces and they're very, very angry, and somebody's got to pay for, you know, for what I'm feeling. And so you and I have had friends who wanted the other person to pay, and our response would be like, that's a dead end, man.
Dead
Like,
end.
you know, sometimes there's children involved. Let's change the conversation. In the face of how your ex-spouse may be behaving, why don't you greet that with love? Why don't you greet that with kindness, compassion, and grace? I know it's hard, and the ego is not going to want any part of this, but we're not asking the ego for partnership. We're thinking long-term about how this is going to affect your children, how this is going to affect your friendships, how this is going to affect you and your experience of life. And so when you look at it from that perspective, you start to ask a different question. Like, in the face of this relationship ending, in the face of these expectations about how I thought my life would go with this person going in a different direction, in the face of that, how can I still show up as my best, still be loving and kindness? How can I accept this? That's a different conversation. So I want to come to my friends with the premise of, how can we take these lemons and really make them into lemonade? Like show me the way. Can you walk that path with me? And fortunately, man, you and the people that I mentioned earlier in earlier podcasts have been that for me. So I just want to say thank you for teaching me how to be a good friend, and for kind of guiding me on the things that I would be asking of my friends that demonstrate that I'm trying to be a good friend.
Well, thanks, Keith. I'm not sure it's deserved, but thank you for
It
that.
is.
One of the things I think anybody who knows you appreciates, and we all appreciate this in our friends, our true friends, and that is your ability to listen. I think that is one of the most underrated things in all friendships. It's not just a matter of agreeing with somebody, that particularly we come to our friends when we're feeling down or low or aggrieved or betrayed or something like that, looking for reinforcement. And it's important to give empathy and to reward people by telling them that they're a worthwhile person, even though they're in a different situation and maybe a difficult situation. But you really need to listen and let people say whatever they want to say. I think it's very difficult to have a true loving and understanding relationship that's built on authenticity if you're constantly interrupting and constantly throwing out judgments and opinions. That really doesn't help. I think the better way to go with it is to just listen and listen and listen and listen, and this ask, how does that hit you? How does that land on you? What does that make you feel like? And why do you feel that way? What is the thing that you would like to change about that? What do you want to feel, as you say, reframing the question? So when you listen and ask just a few of those questions, the friend helps himself or herself understand what the dilemma is, and usually will come to a conclusion that's the best for all involved. The second thing I think that's huge that we often miss is that we really don't need agreement from people. We need people to listen, and then we need perspective. How do you see it? I'd like to have another set of eyes on this deal. Am I going crazy on this? Yeah,
I
okay.
love that.
Yeah, so I had, all right, I feel betrayed because of this person's behavior. How do you see it? Did I bring it on myself? In what way? And am I equally responsible for this? And what's the solution? The other eyes on the problem, I think, are what a true friend gives you. But the deal is, you have to have, you know, people have to be accepting and ready to hear the truth. They have to have ears to hear. They can't simply expect that person to parrot back all of the grievances and expect that to be anything valuable. So to be a true friend in my mind is to listen and to be truthful about giving feedback from your own perspective.
I agree, Rick. And I think, the listening part is really, really important. And I had to learn to be a good listener. I was really good about doling out a lot of feedback. A lot of it was rooted in judgment or my rightness about how they should be, dealing with the situation or dealing with the other person. And as I've been more attentive to being kind and loving and being a contribution, I'm able to leave that judgment out of my responses back when they ask for my feedback. So part of me being a good friend, if someone comes to me with something and I feel like I've listened and I may have something that could be beneficial to contribute, I will ask them, may I share something with you? And a lot of times they'll tell you right off the bat, like, nah, I can't hear that right now. You know what I'm saying?
You want to vent. I just want to vent.
I know how you live, and I'm not ready to give this up right now. Me being right and that person being wrong, I'm not quite ready to give that. I'm like, okay, I'll let them sit for a while. You'll be back because the suffering is going to be too great. It won't turn you loose.
That's
It
right.
will not turn you loose. And I got to that point to where you guys are like, he's not done suffering yet. So let him be. Like, Pete, when I told Pete, I was like, I guess I should stop. I should let this suffering go. He's like, you don't have to. You got a choice. You keep doing it, and then that made me aware of the choice that I had. And then, the other thing too is understanding, and this is when you're able to quiet yourself down and you're already ready response to just tell it to hang on for a second. We don't have to say this right now, is knowing when to say something. I got into a situation years ago. And it was a bunch of people gathered around, and I got into a difficulty, with being able to pay some financial obligations with the studio. And so I got here, and I'm very vulnerable in these conversations. And man, we were locked out, because I at that time I was unable to really keep up with the rental payments. And I wanted to, but I mean, the revenue wasn't coming in, and we couldn't. And so one of our friends, and we were out, gathered around, ready to come in and do a spin class, man. And we get there and the door's locked, and everyone's looking at me like, the leader, like, what's going on? I'm like, we locked out. Why are we locked out? I haven't been able to pay the rent in like 3 months. We're locked out. And then one person says, how'd you let this happen? You know what? There's a lot of questions you can ask. That's not one that's helpful right now. And so we made it through that situation. But another friend came to me, and she had the perfect balance, Rick. She said, Keith, right now we're going to help you resolve this issue satisfactory. And she did. And there's another conversation we need to have, but no, it's not the time. That's a person who understands the moment. You know what I'm saying? So right. I've had to understand the moment that when I have, I think, advice that can be helpful, maybe now is not the time. You have a child at home who's going through something, and they maybe have put themselves in this, in this boat. They may have, created this unfortunate event of circumstances and karma coming together that are really causing them a lot of suffering. But in that moment, your advice might not be the right time. So you wait for an opportunity and a space to share. And that doesn't mean rescuing people, because I'm a big believer in there's a partnership in rescuing people if they want to be helped, but they have to want to help themselves too. But every once in a while, people need a little bit of cover, a little bit of comfort, a little bit of grace, and then to give them the advice of how to not have this happen again. That can come much later. So I become really good about, as you mentioned, listening better and picking moments. And I think what helps me pick the right moment is by simply asking the question, hey, listen, may I share something with you? Do I have permission to share an observation or maybe contribute some advice that could be helpful? And then they'll tell me whether or not I got the moment right. And then when I deliver it, if they say yes, I
Right.
deliver it in a loving and kind way, and leaving them with the idea that they have a choice. Hey, that's just advice. You don't have to take it.
That's
You know,
right.
it's cool. And if they don't take the advice, don't feel like, you know, they're rejecting me. A lot of
That's
times we give out advice and people don't take it. We're so identified with the advice being so right that we become offended if they say, hey, thanks for the advice, but you know, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. That's cool too, you know? So I had to
beautiful.
learn those things. And I think that's helped me become a better friend.
Man, I'll tell you, Keith, if we could master those, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful way to put it. Just the idea of the timing of it and making sure that you ask for permission. And you can tell right away if the person's receptive or not. And then if the person is not, that's great. You have to honor that. And if the person says yes and then rejects what your advice is, that's totally cool. It's their choice, it's their path. One thing that I think the viewers would be surprised to see, and I challenge everyone who's listening to this podcast or watching us talk, when the next time you're in a conversation with a friend and the friend starts talking about something that he or she feels deeply about and wants some help on, or feels like you are a soft shoulder and can help in some way, think of, just notice whether when you listen, you interrupt. Number one, do I interrupt her story or his story? Do I prevent them from completely saying everything that's in their heart? That's number one. Just check and see if you do that, if you interrupt. Secondly, check and see how many times when someone is telling you a problem that's close to them that you say, oh man, well, yeah, but listen to this. This is what happened to me. And you make it about you. That problem gives you a chance to mirror your experience and what you want to talk about. That's total ego, both of those. The idea that you're interrupting and the idea that you're not willing to listen. And then secondly, the idea that whatever that person went through, by me telling you what I went through, somehow that's going to make your situation a lot more easy to handle. It's ridiculous. That's not being a good friend. That's being, you know, somebody who needs strokes for their tough life.
Yeah, yeah. No, Rick, thank you, man. But yeah, you know, the good news is I've got a lot of great examples around me of what good friendship looks like. And I'm just grateful, man. It's a friendship that these friendships are ones in which um, there's no obligation on the other person to make me feel whole, you know, and to really honor each other by the way that we love and treat each other. And we really don't require anything of each other to be different. Like, and as long as you're doing what makes you joyful and you're being kind, I respect it, man. And so I just want to thank you for being that for me. You've been an amazing friend, man. We've never had a disagreement. We've never had a fight. The respect we have for each other is just out of this world, man. Rick, I love you, man.
I love you too, but the viewers have to know that you're a little rough on me, or used to be on the squat rack. That wasn't much fun.
But that's different because you had an ego and you know, we had to deal with that.
That's right. I deserved it all, man. That's for sure.
There you go.
I love you, Keith.
I
See
love you
next
too,
time.
Rick. Thank you. Let me just stop the recording.